Recording started, and three, two, one.
All right. So we are here with a deck profile. Despite not being at Denver, I still made top cut. I got second place, and the instrument for that is my friend here, Justin Martin, and he's going to tell us about his weekend.
Yeah, my weekend ended up going pretty well, of course. I didn't do much. It was all Mitchell Cimino. I was just, almost like the like prophet or like you're speaking through me through the cards. I think mostly for the weekend, but we still got there. So
Of course, of course. So you played me on the order symbol. I'm pretty sure like for the past month before the event, I have not been doing a ton with universes because I was prepping for a different event. But at some point in time, our mutual friend Ryan kind of just like posted a deck list and was like, "I think this is insane," and we were like, "Damn, he cooked!" And then he said nothing else about it because he was also prepping for a different event. But you took that and kind of ran with it, made a few changes, tested a bunch, and wound up with this. And obviously, it went very well for you. You wound up in second place. So yeah, you feel free to start from wherever you want.
yeah. So a little bit more background for especially from the Ryan perspective is I ended up making an order list that was like 10 cards bigger and actually ran 20 attacks. And I played it into Wub playing Nick Reagan and got bodied, and I was like, well, I can see kind of the lines that like seem to work, which are mostly this card that we'll get to in a moment. But this wasn't like quite where it was, and then Webb showed me Ryan's list, and I was like, oh, I should just be doing something closer to this. So I ended up running Ryan's list for like a week, and then I made a few changes that I liked that kind of came from my old list, and that's where we end up here. But to start us off, the most important card in the deck that differs from Ryan's is the four of Koenma's task. Um, I think this card is bonkers. I think especially in a Swiss environment, this card sometimes just auto wins you the game. Anyone who wants to see that in action can go watch my round two game into Anna Margaret, where I happened to rip this on turn three. Which was like pure luck, but like sometimes in Swiss, that's what's necessary. So I was able to remove eight of her cards and grab eight of my own. Or well, the last Cohen was testing, I was also able to grab Patrick babies, which just set me up so that I could win the game on the next turn. But also, even if I couldn't, even if I had to stretch the game out, she had like no offense because she was running the low City Rampage deck. And without City Rampage and Piercing Thorn Lance, you have like no offense as Godzilla, right? Because you have to run all five diffs. So this card is definitely insane. And I opted, whereas Ryan sideboarded this card, I opted to mainboard it and sideboard the alternative action options instead. Next up for the actions is just two showdowns. This card's really good. It commits your opponent on block. I'm not sure what else to say about the card. It also does cancel
Yeah,
actions, which came to handy against City Rampage decks.
yeah. A lot of people have made the comparison of like this feels a lot like standard Sophicia, where in conjunction with like VME and the ability to just like you know, commit their entire board out with some of the foundations that we'll be seeing later in conjunction with my ability. Showdown's just another piece of that puzzle where, like, if your opponent gives you the opportunity to enter the enhanced step, you get to spend your attacks from momentum to set up your next attack turn and stun their board out. And Showdown's just like a really good part of that like whole engine.
Yeah,
So
exactly. The whole goal of the deck is to really make my opponent hate playing the game. Which is why I think I would take this to like one locals, but then I would stop taking it because this deck really does punish you for just attacking. And it's like you're not allowed to do that. Hold up, I'm gonna commit your whole board. I'm then gonna freeze it with our first attack here. And then I'm gonna eventually win the game while committing your board on your own turn. So, like you said, it is exactly like Sophicia, which is funny because that comparison was made to Corey when Corey Nelson, friend of the team, or
mhm.
on the team, not friend of the team. Anyways, when he was looking for a standard deck, and what was like, it's literally just Sophicia, and he like didn't see it. I went to Denver. He watched some of the stream match. He's like, oh, it's literally Sophicia. So it's really funny that we came back to square one with that.
Yeah.
But our first attack of our only 14 attacks here is going to be Heaven Piercing Ice Wall. This card is nuts if you can get full value out of its top enhance. So for anyone who doesn't know the card, because it is a rare from one of the MHA sets,
Girl power, I believe.
But yeah, it's freeze up to 2 foundations stunned during this attack. But it only has stun 1. So on face, it's not a very good card, which is why it's a rare and not an ultra rare. Until we look at Mitchell Cimino and realize that we can give it stun 2, or we look at Krista and realize we can give it another stun ability. And both of those are what unlock this card. And make this card just insanely good. And really makes it where you can slow the game down to your preferred pace, make it where, again, we're slowing the game down so that they feel like they need to pressure us and attack us, and then we punish them on their own turn with stuff like showdown, stuff like our character, and some of the foundations we'll see.
Yeah, we often like colloquially just refer to that card as just time walk because it does just buy you another turn, right? Because your opponent's just down 2 foundations, especially if you see it in the earlier 2 turns where it's like, okay, I will play Heaven Piercing Ice Wall into my opponent's board of like 3 to 5 foundations. Half of their stage is committed, so they can play maybe 1 attack on me total next turn, and then they build, and then you go, great, I got another turn. I'll just build more and then pass, and then if you go into the enhanced step, I'll pass myself and attack back, right?
Yeah, exactly. This card was probably, other than Hacker Extraordinaire, the MVP into Barlow's Order Tarian deck. Because there was like 3 turns in a row that he just had 2 foundations because he kept having a hand of like 6 attacks after I Heaven Piercing Ice Walled both his foundations down. So it's like he just wasn't allowed to build because he had nothing to build and he had just attacks. So it was really like he wasn't allowed to play the game, partially because his deck drew poorly, but also because we could lock him down, which is just, in addition to buying an extra turn, it slowed his game plan down enough that I could eke out the win against Barlow in top 8.
Yeah.
Our next attack is going to be our big attack. This is how most often we're winning the game. It's Patrick Babies, or Patrick Baby. It has stun 2, which is stun 3 in our character, which is really good. It has powerful 3, it has EX3, which are both +1 if we need them to be. And then in addition to that, it just gets a lot of damage and speed on its own. So a lot of times we're allowed to play this card without any momentum, make it a stun 3 move, and then stun 3 them, which makes this really hard to block already. And then because of how our character works, and most every other character or deck, it's a 5 mid 5. In us, it's at the very least a 7 mid 5. Because we give it 1 speed and we give it 1 extra speed by the keyword rating. So this card just gets a crap ton of value out of Mitchell Cimino. And, you know, it ends up being a bomb when we get to the later game.
Yeah, and like a lot of the counterplay for my character is just like making sure the ones that you don't want them to keep hitting you with don't hit so they don't go to momentum. And it's really hard to stop this from hitting you when it's a 7 mid. Like,
Exactly. I don't know what you do on turn 2 when I go stun 3, 7 mid 5. Like, you have to have some kind of like massive speed hate. It should be like
yeah, like a
Rodan
reset or
or have
block
a
trick or
reset.
something. Yeah.
Exactly. The next one, this is definitely much more of a late game card, and this definitely filtered along with Patrick Baby. This filtered around 3 or 4 for me, and in a lot of the testing phases. I was trying to stick around 60 cards, because that is what seemed to have the most success, just so that we see the pieces that we care about most. And to do that, I kept cutting down a card, because of the fact that I had the 4 Coinmas, which put me at 1 more action than Ryan's version. I ended up at 61 instead of 60 because I decided the 1 extra doesn't matter, and that I really needed 4 Walk the Dogs and 4 Patrick Babies because they're just both so important. Um, but to the actual card itself, Walk the Dog, it's in every stun deck. It's almost a must play on all 3 of its symbols. This 8 is the fakest number ever, especially in our character. It's always a 4 diff, unless we're playing into Tarian and he literally only builds 2 foundations. But in that game state, we're allowed to play it on a 6 because he has no real offense at that point, right? So
Hmm.
this card's just incredibly good. It draws us cards. It gives us value. It's super big. It almost always goes to momentum. And the easiest when we're not allowed to like just play 1 Patrick Baby for their life total, being able to go 3 Walk the Dogs, build some foundations. They all hit. Defend on their turn by using our momentum to then have 3 Walk the Dogs next turn. I don't know what most decks do into that. Like that's just a winning line if you do that like 2 turns in a row, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The very last attack is going to be Big Fist Bash. This was another unique one to my list. I believe Ryan was running Val Seizing here instead. I really liked the Breaker 3 block, and I also really liked being able to play around people's answers to Patrick Baby by just picking it up again. So there's actually in my round 7 match against James, I believe it was, where he's playing the Deku deck, which means he can always flash one on my turn. There was a line that I tried to go where I just went Patrick Babies. I was just kind of trying to see if he would go ahead and use it. I don't remember what the plan was for that turn, but I remember just building after I played the Patrick Babies, and I looked down at my hand. It's because I forgot I had one of these. So I could have actually just picked up the Patrick Babies after he flashed it and played a Patrick Babies probably for his life. But we got it the next turn, so it ended up fine.
Yeah,
But
we were
yeah,
playing conservatively. We totally meant to do that.
yeah, exactly. But this one being able to pick up, the thing that they had an answer to, is actually just really good.
Yeah, it's also like in conjunction with the defensive ability of my character being every one of your foundations is ice gliding. If breaker 3 block is just good, right? So like,
Exactly. I did when I first read your character, test my card gamer reading comprehension skills and thought this was Breaker 4. I
oh
never
yeah,
got to a game
everyone
where it
did.
was Breaker 4, but I did do that right after Worlds, and that would have
Oh
been
yeah,
badass.
everyone did. That's those were part of the limitations that we added so that I wouldn't be immediately broken like out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. And turns out we're at least still pretty good out of the gate, so
Yeah,
that's very
we're at
good.
least pretty good. Yeah, we'll take pretty
Um,
good.
the first asset that we have here, now that we're done with our only 14 attacks, is going to be vertical maneuvering equipment. Um, this card is just very hot topic. Most people, I think this card should probably be banned. And anyone who has free momentum, it's just you should be running 4 of this. It says that we get to play the easiest defense ever. We always get to showdown block. We always get to big fist bash and not take damage. And then -3 speed's just insane. In Mitchell Cimino, it also has the added benefit of we can tuck away like our defensive pieces. So like we could review away a showdown and then play an attack on our turn, VME to make that attack unblockable. So we're basically trading our showdown momentum that's going to come to our hand now for a guaranteed attack momentum that we can then use on
Mhm.
defense to attack our opponent. So this really just does everything we need for our engine by making either our stuff incredibly hard for them to justify blocking, by making like a heaven piercing like a 7 low for 4. Like I think it's only doing 4. Like what do we care, right? But we kind of have to sometimes. Or by making their stuff incredibly blockable. So the other asset that we ran is Team Dr. Ichigaki. This has the word cancel on it. I think that's an underprinted word right now in terms of defense. So anything that says cancel usually is just like a catch-all answer to a lot of things in the format. So having this one in the main board just says anything that I didn't anticipate during deck building or testing, I hopefully have the answer to. For example, speaking of the Deku game again, I can always answer Phantom Threat by just canceling the 5th response, which is
Mhm.
really useful. There's some other times that I canceled it. In the finals match, if I canceled the uh, Ice Sword Execution commit 2, I maybe squeak out game 1. I at least don't lose the game as quickly. But I was saving it for hopefully something better and never ended up finding anything better. So. That's it for the assets. Moving on to the foundations. A lot of these are going to be really straightforward. It's mostly defensive pieces, and for anyone who plays Magic, like stacks pieces, where I'm trying to do the showdown thing of committing their board on their turn. And the first one to start that off is going to be the new number 1. This is just a speed reset we can use every turn. For example, in the Deku match, it said that the only way that he was ever killing me if I had one of these on in my stage was if he found a Phantom Threat specifically. So this one's definitely really good. It also can't be sealed, so there's not really a ton of answers to it unless you cancel the enhance. Next up is the absolutely necessary card for this deck, other than VME, for this character specifically, and the reason that we usually run the order symbol, which is going to be Hacker Extraordinaire. Um, if this didn't say flip 1 rival asset, we would still run 4x of this card. This card says basically we get to like +2 our hand size if we use it correctly. If not +3, +4 for like each one that's like in our stage. Because we get to spin a momentum to draw a card either on our turn or on their turn. And then because of Mitchell, we get that momentum back at the end of the turn. This is just like, I don't think there's many cards that have the same amount of value. It almost felt like year 1 or when MHA 01 was legal and we were playing passing the torch, that we just got to play the most degenerate gameplay of like build our whole hand, draw 2 on passing the torch if our opponent didn't have flash or an answer to passing the torch. So it gave the same feelings, and that's why I really like this card. It's definitely necessary.
Yeah, and a lot of it is like we were saying, it's so punishing to like lazily poke against this deck
Hmm.
because entering the enhanced step just gives me a myriad of ways to spend momentum or get rid of your assets that are good. Especially since like there were a lot of Tarion at this tournament, and I'm sure that 4x hacker main board was just very annoying for them.
Yeah, it's definitely the one game that I lost against Barlow. One of the biggest problems with that, I never saw a hacker. Like, I think I checked all three of my hackers in the top like 30 cards, and I was like, okay, well, we weren't destined to win this one against Barlow. But yeah, this one definitely really good into Tarion as well. So that was nice. We didn't have to think about that matchup as much. Next up are 8 copies of Master of Drunken Fighting. I know they look like they have different art. They do not. They just say commit our opponent one on their turn. This one says it at enhanced speed. This one says it at response speed when I do my character ability. So, next up is 3 copies of Childlike Appearance. This is again one of my additions that really differed from Ryan's eventual list that he worked on. Um, this one I really like because it does both the commit them down one that like we're always trying to do on our opponent's turn, but it's also free 0 speed, which definitely comes in handy. I think the only bad part about this card is that it checks a 4. I think it's the only deterrent to running this card. But otherwise, because of the fact that our character is a free momentum character, this set I got to live a lot of turns that I just should not have been allowed to because my opponent made something really fast. As an example, in finals, if I see a childlike appearance like anywhere in game 2, then I don't ever lose that game. I definitely lost that game because I never once saw this card. Or at the very least, it makes it where Andrew has to play Ice Sword Execution to commit this one down. And then maybe I get to like keep some other pieces that help that matchup a lot more.
Yeah, a lot of what I've noticed and like what Ryan's list specifically differs from is he mainboards Fierce Wings, right? So like if you don't see these pieces, Fierce Wings can go pick them up if you check them. But I noticed that those are in the sideboard for you. So I guess we can talk about that when we get there, but like do you think that would have changed much?
Um, I think it depends. That basically the decision making there is whether we run Koenmas or not, because I don't think we're allowed to run any amount of Fierce Wings
Yeah.
and Koenmas and Showdown.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
too many actions probably.
yeah, I think it's possible that like I don't know. I think it's up to argument because the amount it didn't end up Columbus didn't end up coming into handy as much as I thought it would in Swiss, except on stream. I only resolved that card on stream. I don't know why. It was very funny because my goal whenever I was on stream was to resolve the card because it's funny. It's we
Yeah,
remove
it's
their stuff,
hilarious.
but um, it didn't end up coming out in as much handy throughout the day. I think there's some game states I could have squeaked out. But at the same time, like it kind of also gave me the free win into Anna Margaret because her deck just like couldn't do anything into that card. Like me picking up an
Correct.
action
Yeah.
cancel every turn, or just removing the cards that I didn't want her to have, was very good. Same thing to like the Deku deck. So it's like there's maybe 2 matchups I would have had better in Swiss with that version where we're doing Fierce Wings instead, and we are able to find Childlikes easier. And maybe even the round 2, but maybe I don't make it to or the finals rather. But maybe I don't make it to finals. I think is like
Yeah,
also
by
where
that
I've
same
landed.
token. For sure, for sure.
Exactly. Our very last 2-dip foundation is just going to be incompatible quirks. This readies itself. It says -2 speed. Um, I think this one is just really good. I think if you're on Evil, Air, or Order, and you're not running at least one of these, that you should probably have a really good reason. It kind of just does too much. I think this one could have checked a 4 and people would still run it. Which is usually a sign of a card that's really good, in my opinion.
Yeah. Card's also super useful in so far as like if we've gotten to the point on our attack string where we're trying to kill them where their entire board is already sideways and we don't need to be committing like forceful negotiators for my effect or like using Master of Drunken Fightings. It's just a free card to commit with my response that can re-ready itself after we've like used every other like piece on our board. Like if you need to play an attack string that's 3 or 4 attacks deep, You go, okay, on a 5, on a 5, on a 6, and then you like commit this, commit something else, re-ready that by removing what you committed, and you can just keep going like that.
Yeah, exactly. And there are definitely times. I point to stream a lot only because I was on stream for 4 rounds. Funny enough. But there's only at times on stream and throughout the days in general. That this card made it where I was able to crack back on lower foundations. Because the
Mhm.
biggest limiting factor to our character is the fact that we have to commit foundations to be very effective. So this card saying that that's not as much of a cost is very good for us. Next up is for acrobatic style. This one's kind of like this card, but on a 1 diff. It just readies after we commit them down, and we've already seen how many things we have that commit them down. So, next up is for inspiring song. I went back and forth between this, which was in Ryan's original list, and creeped out, which is what I swapped to, or rather was in my original list. And it really came down to the fact that I didn't think about the value of the card until later, and this one checks a 6. So creeped out in this card, other than the fact that creeped out you can use every turn, have the same value. They're effectively -2 speed. But this one has the added benefit of adding to our check and checking a 6, which is why this one ended up making it in the list over creeped out.
Yeah,
Uh,
makes sense.
that ended up being a very good decision. This card put in overtime throughout the weekend. Our first zero diff is Botan's coaching. This one says draw a card if our hand's empty. This one also just says find the pieces that we care about on our own turn, or sometimes remove a block that our opponent cares about. I think everyone knows that this card's good, and one of the zero diffs you run on its symbols. So, um, this card in our 14 attack deck that removes our momentum instead of putting in discard says enhance flip do nothing and then deadlock enhance commit one of their good foundations. So it was really only in there because it's a zero diff and it's our only deadlock. So it was definitely our game plan in deadlock was to have essentially 4 extra copies of Master of Drunken Fighting, except I get to choose the target.
Yeah, for sure. That's the Ryan's list was hedging for like having over the 2 copies of Big Fist Bash, he was having Vile Seizing in because a lot of the
Mhm.
times what people will do to combat like you turning their entire staging area sideways is just like not giving you the chance to enter the enhanced step and like just building and passing. And when they do that, they wind up in deadlock. So in conjunction with like 4 you're finished and 2 Vile Seizings in the deck, you just get to punish them for that as well. And with the Slimmer 60, if you're just in a draw pass war, you will find it before they do. But yeah, that card's just crazy. It's just another instance of like turns specific things sideways.
Yeah, exactly. Never mind that we get to choose.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I definitely opted for because that was also I did see that with the vial seizing, and I definitely opted, which maybe I shouldn't do this at a bigger event than Denver because Denver we knew going in was gonna be smaller. But I opted for my opponents aren't gonna realize that they're supposed to build and pass, and that did end up working well for me. Whether it's because of their hands or whether because they just didn't realize that's the game plan in my deck. But our last 2 diff or our last 0 diff is gonna be saving Bakugo. This is just necessary into decks that are trying to flip our things. Um, it didn't come in that handy over the weekend. I think I either played it into like a casual game into like a Byakko or something like that. But or no, I'm sorry, my first round was into Byakko. So this technically became draw one whenever they did their enhance. But overall, it's just a necessary piece to have, so you can't have your important pieces target flipped, which is why it's only 2. So that's the main deck. Next up is the sideboard, which is going to be very blue heavy. It's like very action based. And I think that's where you get, especially because of the 4 copies of Koenma's. We just really need things that can replace that card if we don't think it's useful in the matchup. Or if we think there are more useful things, it's a very easy card to come out. So we got to run a lot of really cool blue cards in the sideboard. The first one is gonna just be Genkai's Guidance. This is just kind of a catch-all answer to a lot of things. It answers Deku really well. It answers decks that are trying to like go out to like 5 cards deep in pool, and really can only pass that last one. We just go cool. well, you can't play another one. It didn't really come in all that much. I played it once in the Rodan match, but I think that, or I played it once in some match that I like destroyed down to 2 foundations, but there wasn't really anything else I could do, anyways. So I still lost that match. Um, the next one is Scanlan's Hand. Um, this card is probably the only reason I won against Barlow in top 8. This card's absolutely nuts. And our character, it always says commit their character if we need it to. And Tarian's game plan is to build a lot of assets and have very few foundations. So he's never gonna be in deadlock. He's in like pseudo deadlock because he can always block something, but or make his things unblockable, but he doesn't commit a lot of foundations for it. So this one's saying that Tarian doesn't have a character anymore. Just makes it really easy. And then actually in the game-winning line, I used it to commit an elasticity instead. Because as people may have seen on stream against Rodan, this deck loses to elasticity. So if someone is running this at your locals, just put 4 elasticity in your deck, and it can't do anything. So next up is going to be item box. I kept swapping this out in the main board for Team Dr. Ichigaki. So I knew one would end up in the main, one would end up in the side. This just answers anything that makes really big attacks. And I opted for Team Dr. Ichigaki in the main. And in hindsight, I think that was the correct decision. So I definitely like that one. Next up is 2 Fierce Wings. If we're not running Koenma's task, this is in the main board every single time. So that means for my sideboard, if I'm ever siding out Koenma's, this is coming in very often. The only time it's not coming in is if we side in our very last card, but we'll get to that one in a moment. But it just makes it where we can pick up Showdown, so there's extra copies of that. Having these 3 specifically come in into the Barlow match was very good. Because there was one turn that I used the Scanlan to like get some damage in, but I knew I wasn't gonna be able to kill him because he was at like full health. And then I ended up drawing a Fierce Wings. So he literally said out loud, "Okay, so I don't have to deal with Scanlans. That's in the discard. I don't have to worry about that one." And then the very next turn, I Fierce Wings and grabbed Scanlan's hand. And he's like, "Oh, I guess I have to
Ah,
think about
dang
that one
it.
again."
Yeah.
um, Absorbed Energy Strike is our next card. I think this one's really good into momentum decks, and it definitely came in sometimes for that. It also flips their stuff, which is good into momentum decks or decks that care about attacks being in their card pool. Um, I think this one could just be Vial Seizing instead. I don't know if I brought this to another event, whether it'd be Vial Seizing or Absorbed Energy Strike. This one being like a safe answer to momentum decks feels a little too important and a little too good. But it definitely helped into like Tarian. So it definitely was not useless. But it was one of the slots that I was definitely like, I know this is a good sideboard card, but I'm not positive it'll come in as Sandy, and I still kind of feel that way. So this is definitely one of the open slots if you're thinking about running this deck, but you don't like this card. And then our last sideboard card is just going to be 3 copies of Runaway. I don't know why we're still. For anyone who's newer to the game, this card's really good. It just basically says we don't die on a lot of turns because it stops both string decks and one-shot decks. So it really pulls double duty unless they have a way to cancel it. For anyone is familiar with the game, isn't as new to the game, I don't know why we're still talking about this card. I think this card could have been banned after Nats. I guess they thought that struggling going away means this card isn't as good. But I think this card's still pretty bonkers. Especially if someone decides to pick up Krista again, because that character certainly is not dead, even if it didn't take Worlds, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the deck profile. I'm happy that you had a good time playing my character. I'm happy you got to show off at Denver. Any shout outs that you wanted to have?
Yeah, of course, would love to shout out our team, Metagame Liberation Army. I believe we're gonna have some of the other teammates' deck profiles going up there, and of course those deck profiles will point over here, which will be great. And then I think we have a goal of we did some recaps in the past, where like we had like 8 recaps or something like that. I realized that's a bit untenable, so I think our plan this time around is to just have like one big recap, possibly like with a host, almost like a podcast episode. So definitely check that out. But other than that, I just want to thank Mitchell Cimino himself for making such a wonderfully designed card. Um, I haven't loved building decks for this game for the last year to year and a half. And I've built this character on all three symbols, and I'm gonna keep doing that because this is my favorite character that's been printed thus far since I started playing.
Yeah.
And of
Hell
course, I
yeah.
have to thank him. And
Yeah.
you know, he also walks that dog pretty well. So
I'm pretty good with a yo-yo. People have said that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin.
yeah, thank you.